Hey guys, if you're enjoying the content I'm putting up, be sure to subscribe so you always know when a new video pops up. Now that we got that part out of the way, let's get into the video. Final Fantasy XIV is a massive game with thousands of hours of content. What I'm going to do here is break down some of the major plot points for those of you who want to know more about Eorzea, but may not have time to experience it all firsthand. This time, we're covering the Stormblood portion of the Dragoon storyline. After Estinian's incident with Nidhogg, and something I'll cover another time, he left Ishgard to do his own thing, and since Albrecht was his teacher, it seems only fitting that you let him know about the Dragoon's departure. He already knows, and while he understands why he left, he would have liked it if the man would have told him. Of course, since the Dragon Song War is over, the city doesn't need an Azure Dragoon anymore. Honestly, the entire Dragoon Order is going to have to change since the Dragons and Ishgardians are allies now. However, while Estinian's fine, Albrecht is still worried about Justine. Ironically enough, Monogame shows up while you're talking about his daughter. She had sent him a letter from the Chocobo Forest telling him to find you. She didn't say any more, so it's off to Dravania you go. When you arrive, Justine finds you pretty fast, and she's happy to tell you that the dragon blood is far easier for her to control now thanks to a new friend she made. His name is Onkai, and he's a small dragon who has heard a lot about you from his father. Onkai had found Justine when she was being consumed by the dragon's blood, and he had helped her hold off the effects and learn how to live with them. Since he helped her, to repay the debt, she called you, because Onkai has a problem that maybe you can help with. His father had a consort, but since she was a part of Nidhogg's brood and Ornkai's father was a part of Racevelger's, the war forced them to separate. His father told his consort to fly to the east, far away from Nidhogg's war. She didn't want to fight humans, so she complied, but since the war is over, Onkai believes she'll come back, if she even knows that it's over. He wants you to help search for her, but she left Dravania 1,000 years ago, so there's no telling where she is now. Justine would do it herself, but she's still learning to control her dragon blood, so you're the only person she can turn to. Always being willing to help friends, you agree, and you head back to Albrecht to see if he's heard any legends about dragons living in the Far East. He finds the prospect of a former dragon-slaying machine like Justine going out of her way to help a dragon to be strange, but a bit pleasant. He does know a priest who is well versed in all things dragon, and the man tells him a story that may be of interest to you, although he warns you that these legends grow over time, and what people say was a dragon sighting may have just been a low-flying red chocobo, which would actually be much worse. I'd fight a dragon over another red chocobo any day. True or not, Albrecht wrote down the story for you to take to Justine along with his well wishes. The story tells of the slumbering worm of Eorzea, so you and Onkai head to the Fist of Raga temple in the Fringes because that's where the story of the creature started. At the temple, Onkai goes inside, eager to find his father's consort, but his scream causes you to go running after him. Instead of finding a dragon, you find a giant stone guardian that attacks you. After you deal with it, the sound of the battle draws a familiar face from within the temple. Professor Eric, a researcher who you worked with during your time training with the monk Wiedergeld, was also in the temple researching the slumbering worm. The slumbering worm wasn't a dragon at all, but a priest named Imart who died 300 years ago. Eric goes into a long explanation about Imart being a monk with the strength of a dragon, but since that's not what you came here for, you leave while the professor rambles on, not even noticing that you left. Albrecht apologizes for giving you a useless trail to follow, but he does have another one for you to check out. This one will send you to the far east to Kugane, but it will take him a bit of time to find a way to get Onkai across the water since he's not nearly strong enough of a flyer to make it on his own. With a little time, Albrecht finds a way to transport Onkai to Kugane, and he also told the dragon one of the local legends before the trip, so he should have a lot to tell you when you arrive. In Kugane, you head to the Bocassine hot springs where Onkai is supposed to be waiting for you. When you ask the owner about him, it turns out that the way Albrecht had arranged for the dragon to travel was through FedEx, which he is not happy with since the crate that he was shipped in was full of ice. While dragons can put themselves into a deep sleep, they aren't bears and don't need to be in freezing temperatures for them to do it. Although he does admit that it was probably the best sleep he's had in years, which makes you wonder just why he was complaining so much. But since you're both here, you can continue to search for Fawn M. The legend Albrecht told him about before sticking him in the box was of Seryu, a story of a dragon guardian of the Far East, but Onkai has already dismissed it, since the story is a couple thousand years old, and Fawn M has only been in the land for a millennia. There is another more recent story about the Serpent of the Ruby Sea that may be more relevant. Onkai thinks you should ask the people of Isari to see if they can give you a bit of guidance. The story is very popular in the area, and while some think it's a fairy tale, an old woman assures you that it's not. If you want proof, she says you can find it at the choral banquet. Just don't blame her if it eats you. You call on Kai and the two of you go check up on the creature, even though he doesn't think it's Fon-Em. Dragons don't tend to eat people whole, at least not raw. Dragons always cook their humans before they eat them. It's not like they're barbarians. Kai is happy to use this time as an excuse to hunt, since you'll need some meat to draw out the beast, and by the time you make it to the choral banquet, he's already gotten the bait you'll need. He tosses it into the water and a huge serpent attacks you almost immediately. Kai did not expect it to be so big, but you deal with it all the same. While you didn't find what you were looking for, the young dragon's happy that you did at least kill a marvelous dinner. With the meat in tow, he heads back to Kugane. By the time your slow legs carry you back, the dragon's already eaten all of the sea creature without saving you anything but scraps. As a fan of seafood myself, this does not make me happy. Not at all. On the plus side, Kai likes this part of the world. Unlike the people in Ishgard, everyone is really nice to Duranians here. The owner seems to really want him to stick around, although it's probably because he brings in so many new customers. One of those customers told him something that may be interesting to the two of you. You go to meet him, and it turns out to be Gyoto, the Namazu that tried to turn you into the Empire when you were fighting to free Doma, the one that Lise kicked very hard and carried off. He promises that he's not going to betray you again, mainly because he doesn't want to deal with your violent blonde friend. There's a dragon at the Azim Steppe, so the people of Reunion say, so that's where you're headed next. In Reunion, Kai talks to some children while you question a few other people. The people know of the creature. Every so often it wakes up, destroys some stuff, then goes back to sleep in its lair to the north. Glad to finally be on the right track, the two of you head toward the dragon's lair. On your trek, you come across an Ornery warrior who asks if you're hunting the dragon too. The thought shocks Kai, and when he tells the warrior that you want to talk to the dragon, he laughs at you. The dragon's definitely not in the mood to talk. It took down 8 of Ornery's finest warriors, and the warrior runs off to tell his leader what happened. When you find Fon-Em, you see that the man was right. The dragon is not in any mood to talk, and it attacks you too. The fighting gets intense, and Kai urges you to leave before either you die or you have to kill the dragon. He is distraught over his failure. You found his father's consort, yet he couldn't even calm her down for long enough to talk. He decides to hunt for a while to clear his head and promises to meet you in Reunion later. The hunt calms him, but it hasn't given him any ideas on how to calm Fon-Em. Even though he's older than you by quite a bit, he still can't figure this out. Dravanians live a long time and grow very differently from humans, something you should have already known from how much time you spent around them. That thought sparks an idea in Kai. He's heard of dragons going into seclusion while depressed, and over time they have a mental breakdown. Consorts are said to help with this, which is the main reason why Dravanians get married. The cause of Fon-Em's fury is probably the extreme loneliness she felt from being without a mate for 1,000 years. The question is how to go about fixing it without Kai's father being nearby. While you plan, the Ornery warrior you saw before sees you and lets you know that a group of merchants hired a hunter to kill the dragon, and he's on his way to watch the idiot get eaten. Kai doubts a hunter would be of any kind of threat to Fon-Em, but just in case he's wrong, you need to be there, so you rush back to where you last faced the dragon. It's a good thing you did, because the hunter is none other than Estinian Wormblood himself. After Ishgard was put into the hands of Emmerich, Estinian decided to travel for a bit to find a new purpose since Ishgard really didn't need him anymore. While he was wandering around, he heard of Fon-Em. He had planned on reasoning with the dragon if he could, and if not, well, that's what his lance is for. He believes the dragon is feeling the effects of Nidhogg's call to his horde. He's impressed that the dragon even managed to resist the call to attack Ishgard, but fighting the pull of the Great Worm would drive anyone crazy. The only way he can think of to talk to her is to beat her until she's too hurt to fight, then have Kai hit her with his strongest roar to snap her out of her blood rage. The little dragon's nervous, but with you and Estinian facing the mighty dragon, there's nothing to worry about. Despite the two of you hitting Fon-Em with everything you have, Kai's roar only snaps her back for a moment. Fortunately, his father shows up and roars, calming his wife and letting her know that the war is over. Calm now, she thanks you, letting you know that 1,000 years ago, when Nidhogg demanded they go to war with the mortals, she couldn't stop thinking about the friends she'd made among them during her time with her husband. But the call of a dragon's father is not something you can ignore without pain, so her husband told her to get as far away as she could until the war ended to dampen the pain, but he couldn't leave Zenith unprotected, so he stayed behind. He would have never found her again had he not heard his son's roar. The whole thing makes Onkai uncomfortable. Emotional stuff between adults usually does that to kids, and he drags you and Estinian away to give them a bit of privacy. He thanks you both, but the Azure Dragoon shrugs it off. After what Nidhogg did to him, he was more than happy to prevent Fawn from suffering that fate, even though the experience made him more powerful in a different way. Since he's left his old life behind, Onkai decides that instead of being Azure Dragoons, the two of you will now be called Crimson Dragoons, since you harness Dragon's power by fighting with them. Estinian actually likes the new title, and bids the two of you farewell for now. Onkai vows to become as strong as his father, so next time the two of you fight together, you will be able to charge into battle on his back. But until then, it's time for him to go home to a much needed rest, and it's time for you to do the same. This concludes the Stormblood portion of the Dragoon storyline. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the next part of the story.